On August 10th, 2001, in Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City's Mike Sweeney charges the mound to fight Detroit's Jeff Weaver. This video is presented by T-Mobile. That'll be our main event today, but we've also got a few quick undercard bouts that ought to set things up nicely. They're going to help us examine the difference between throwing at a batter on purpose and throwing at a batter by accident, as well as the question of whether or not that matters. Let's now pull up our Constellation map and navigate to what I have titled the Ramirez-Clemens-Weaver system. The careers of the players involved span from outfielder John Shelby's first season in 1981 to fellow outfielder Manny Ramirez's final season in 2011. I had to double-deck the Clemens career in this constellation to make it clear that Clemens and Sweeney, whose careers overlap here, did not fight. In 1991, Shelby's final season, he charged the mound to fight Roger Clemens, who was halfway through his third of 7 Cy Young Award-winning seasons. On July 6th, in the top of the second, Clemens gave up back-to-back homers against Detroit. He'd enjoyed such off-the-chart success that he'd never really had to build much tolerance for failing, so when the next batter, John Shelby, steps into the box, Clemens chucks an obviously intentional beanball right between the letters and numbers. When Shelby charges, he takes his bat with him, a categorical no-no that could send things sideways really quickly. Thankfully, catcher John Marzano chases him down and executes a brilliant takedown. Clemens was charged again 12 years later in 2003 by Manny Ramirez. Let's save that one for its own episode because that is the Don Zimmer one. A few years prior, Manny charged one of the stars of today's show, Jeff Weaver, whose journey here requires some prologue. On April 23, 1999, Cleveland's Jarrett Wright is having a pretty crappy bottom of the fifth. He just gave up a leadoff homer, then a walk, then a single, and has decided to take it out on the next guy up, Boston's Darren Lewis. Why am I so convinced this is intentional? Well, when Lewis runs at him, he gleefully flips away his glove, which is always something you look for, and gives a bring-it-on gesture before getting knocked down by Lewis's beautifully graceless kick-punch combo thing. Even the winner, if there is one, usually looks pretty dumb in these fights. Anyway, after they're separated, Wright yells at Lewis, "Yeah, I threw at your head." Not much room for confusion there. About a month later, during another tough inning, Wright hits another batter, this time Detroit's Tony Clark. This is not intentional, Clark says as much, and there are a couple of tells anyway. For one, the count was 0-2. If he was going to throw at him, he already would have. For another, his body language is totally different this time around. Wright shakes his head and looks pretty apologetic. But to the Tigers, intent doesn't matter so much when their guy is exhibiting concussion-like symptoms. Somebody's got to pay for this. When Weaver takes the mound in the bottom half of the inning, he nails the first batter he sees, Manny Ramirez, in retaliation. For the record, Weaver only states that he didn't mean to hit him in the head, not that he didn't mean to hit him. Manny is intercepted before he can get to Weaver, but if you're wondering whether the Tigers are still salty over Wright's initial beanball, take a look at Detroit's Larry Parrish, who works his way over to Wright and throws him to the ground. It is important to note here that Parrish is the Tigers' manager. So we have established that Weaver, like Wright, is capable of throwing a beanball egregious enough to invite physical assault. But as we move on to our main event, those of you familiar with Royal slugger Mike Sweeney are probably a little surprised to see him tangled up in one of these. Sweeney's reputation as the nicest guy in baseball precedes him. It's a reputation he comes by, honestly. He does do all the standard nice guy stuff, staying late to sign autographs, showing up for charity events, helping out in the community, and to a degree above and beyond his peers. But simply calling him nice feels like selling him a little bit short. Sweeney, I'm convinced, is a genuine and kind-hearted man whose deep faith in God compels him to treat others in a Christ-like manner. He rushes to the defense of that which needs defending, or at least that which he thinks needs defending. That applies to this fight, yeah, it applies to some other things too. If you didn't pay any attention at all to baseball in 2006, Mike Sweeney might still have been in your orbit if you'd been following the stem cell research debate. The battle lines were drawn in Missouri, with senatorial candidate Claire McCaskill enlisting the help of actor Michael J. Fox to cut an ad in support of the research. Fox had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, one of many diseases that might be treated or even outright cured with breakthroughs resulting from stem cell research. In response, the anti-stem cell research group Missourians Against Human Cloning hastily expedited production on an ad they ran during the World Series. I would describe the production style of the commercial you're about to see as a cross between Wi-Fi router setup tutorial and hostage video. Several notable figures from Catholic and evangelical circles lent their services, and the copy written up for them was so disjointed, confusing, and lacking in context that they may as well have been speaking in Aramaic, which actor Jim Caviezel literally did. That's how the ad starts. That's it. And then it just cuts to Cardinals pitcher Jeff Suppan. We also see Patricia Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond, as well as Kurt Warner.
Californians agreed to spend $6 billion on the exact same science. Now they admit there won't be any cures for at least 15 years.
I don't know what to tell you, Kurt. Sometimes difficult things take a long time. To put it in football terms for you, there was once a Hall of Fame quarterback who didn't make his first NFL start until he was 28. And then there's Mike Sweeney. It's important to note that this is the entirety of his appearance.
25 women have died, and 6,000 have complained of complications. Missouri, don't be fooled.
Neither Sweeney nor his co-stars elaborate on that claim in the least. You can't just be like, people died, and then not explain who or where or why or how. I tried my best to track down the source of this claim. I scoured old newspapers, I looked through the group's old website, but I came up empty. I do believe that Sweeney believes that the line they wrote for him is true, and now we're back to the question of whether intent matters, aren't we? This is part of a pattern of Sweeney briefly shedding his nice guy image to come to the defense of causes that, if you ask me, did not warrant his defense. In 2010, while playing for the Mariners, his teammate Ken Griffey Jr. was reported to have taken a nap in the clubhouse in the middle of a game. Sweeney passionately defended his teammate, a laudable instinct. Longtime viewers may recall that around this time, things were tough for Griffey. He couldn't sleep well at night, he was thousands of miles from his family, he missed them dearly. Thing is though, Sweeney took the extraordinary step of challenging any other Mariner who might have leaked this story to fight him. If there was no truth to this story, Jr. certainly would have denied it, but he did not deny it, and he has not to this day. Sweeney was also steadfastly loyal to the Kansas City Royals, and I say this as a lifelong on-again, off-again, fair-weather Royals fan. The Royals organization did not deserve that loyalty. This chart illustrates the number of games ahead or behind the Royals were in their division after every single game from 1985 when they won their first World Series championship to 2015 when they won their second. Since those two titles were 30 years apart and there were 30 teams in baseball throughout most of that period, you could argue that this wait was exactly as long as it should have been, and that as far as titles are concerned, there's nothing to complain about. And I mean, it's a race. A race usually only has one leader, so the other 4 to 6 are likely to be behind most of the time. These Royals, though, appeared to turn around and run the wrong way every year, scared off by every starting gun. Winning the division was rarely a realistic possibility. In fact, more than 10% of these games were played when they were so far back in the standings that winning the division was a mathematical impossibility. That's 515 games. You can subtract a few of those to account for times they were still mathematically alive in wildcard races, but still, that's several hundred games that did not matter, that were essentially reduced to baseball practice on account of how much losing they'd already done. This is a trend you might expect a sports team to endure for 3 seasons if things really go south, not 3 decades. The root of this problem is pretty easy to identify: cheap ownership. It's a tried and true playbook. You wail all day about playing in a relatively small market and you slash payroll while silently making money hand over fist through revenue sharing and TV deals. Walmart CEO David Glass became the Royals CEO in 1993, bought the team outright in 2000 for $96 million, and sold it in 2019 for around $1 billion. Throughout these years, free agent signings were limited to once big names who were well past their primes. Whenever their farm system did develop a star like Johnny Damon or Carlos Beltran, they were allowed to walk in free agency. They very nearly traded Mike Sweeney prior to the 1999 season before he even had a chance to establish himself as a star. Upon learning such a trade was imminent, most guys in his position would probably be happy to jump ship to a team that had a non-zero chance at contention. Sweeney found a church pew in Overland Park and bawled his eyes out. The Royals did not ultimately trade Mike Sweeney, who immediately developed into the face of the franchise and became a 5-time All-Star. He was that very rare class of hitter who could sock dingers while also maintaining a batting average well over 300 year after year. As such, he was a very good player, playing for derelict teams built by cheapskate ownership. They didn't deserve him. But the other guys in the clubhouse did deserve the leadership he offered. And the deprived fan base did deserve at least one guy, one mainstay and standard bearer they could pull for year after year. And in that sense, this loyalty did make sense for Sweeney, even if it wasn't deserved. Players in all team sports hop franchises constantly in pursuit of that elusive title without ever getting one. Rather than obsessing over what you can't really control, why not drop anchor where you're at, make a solid chunk of money, and become a local legend? Sweeney often liked to use the metaphor of the tandem bicycle, in which he let God steer in the front seat and committed himself to sitting back and pedaling. That's certainly what he did throughout this 13-year tenure in Kansas City. It's what he wanted out of this, and that's what he got. We now return to August 10th, 2001. It makes almost too much sense that Weaver would try to hit Sweeney with a pitch here. For starters, the Royals and Tigers are division rivals. How much of a factor does that play in these affairs? I built figure 2 to try to find out. I had suspected that mound-chargings would be more frequent among division rivals. Halfway through crunching this data, I realized that I was mostly wrong about that, and this chart was not going to prove the point I wanted it to prove. Then I just finished making it anyway because I thought it was neat. This, of course, is not how the divisions have always been aligned, but it does still bottle up the most intense rivalries into the same divisions. Here we can see that Tampa Bay and Boston have been involved in one mound charging, Toronto and Boston also one. The Red Sox have tangled in 2 apiece with the Yankees and Orioles, so those 2 bars are taller. The Yankees' ties to the Orioles and Blue Jays are higher still because they've conducted 3 mound chargings apiece. The Tampa Bay Rays weren't founded till 1998, just when the frequency of mound chargings was set to level off, so they've never had the chance to mix it up with Baltimore, Toronto, or the Yankees. Most of the rest of the divisions look similar. Of those you see here, the only 4-time mound charging duo is Mets-Braves, not that surprising if you know their history. But the interdivisional factor is far more muted than I would have thought. I never would have guessed, for example, that the Brewers have never once tangled with 3 of their 4 current division rivals despite moving to the NL Central 25 plus years ago. All in all, a team isn't more likely to fight a division rival than any other team. These rivalries don't seem to count for a lot when it comes to mound charging. Unless you're in the Royals and Tigers division, the American League Central. All 3 of baseball's most frequent dance partners live inside this division: Detroit, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Cleveland, Kansas City. I don't know why. Midwestern rage? Not really. The NL Central has the tamest showing here. I do think there's more than standard deviation at play here, though. Certain franchises are just more irritated with each other than others. And in particular, Mike Sweeney's Royals and Jeff Weaver's Tigers share a fair amount of madness, with the fight we're about to see contributing to 4 total mound chargings. Since division rivals play each other more often, Sweeney and Weaver have seen a lot of each other. Sweeney's taken the upper hand, going 10 for 27 with 2 homers off Weaver entering this plate appearance. Weaver's probably sick of seeing him by now, making an intentional beating a little bit more believable. And I repeat myself, but it would almost make too much sense when you look at this. The year prior, not only did Weaver lead the league in batters hit, but Sweeney led the league in most times hit by a pitch. But Sweeney's a man of God, a model citizen, a Boy Scout, a man whose mere appearance in this historical record is frankly shocking. What sort of infernal beanball must Weaver have thrown to elicit a violent response from this modern-day saint? Well, Jeff Weaver did not intentionally hit Mike Sweeney with a pitch. Weaver did not hit him with a pitch, period. In fact, Weaver did not even throw a pitch. Across this entire sample of 264 mound chargings, this is the only one I've found in which the batter charged the pitcher before the plate appearance had even officially begun. Rosin bags, as far as I can figure, seem to have first appeared on Major League Baseball diamonds in the 1910s. It's illegal for pitchers to use foreign substances to doctor a baseball, but it was decided a long time ago that the pitcher at least has the right to keep his hands dry, so he's permitted to keep one on the mound and dust his hands with it. Just enough rosin leaks through the bag to do the trick. The rosin bag is generally expected to sit somewhere far back on the mound so it doesn't visually distract the batter or interfere with a batted ball. As Weaver gets ready to pitch to Sweeney, it's closer to the top of the mound. Sweeney has just asked plate umpire Mike Fichter to ask Weaver to move the bag. Weaver says, "No, I didn't put it there, so I'm not going to move it." A plausible claim, since in the pre-COVID days they just threw one out there for every pitcher to share. Royals pitcher Paul Byrd might well have left it there in the top of the inning. Fichter seems to say, "Well, whatever, I tried," and walks back to the plate. I'd like to stop here for just a second and divulge that I find the experience of relitigating a quarter-century-old disagreement concerning a bag lying on the ground to be debasing and embarrassing. Why are we arguing? Who cares? If you're Weaver, why not just move the bag anyway? I don't know. Maybe, over the course of the dozens of times they've faced each other in the past, Sweeney and Weaver have developed a sort of unspoken annoyance toward each other. That's believable. Maybe Sweeney, well aware of Weaver's history of throwing at guys, sees him as a punk. Maybe Weaver sees Sweeney as a sanctimonious holy roller. Here you can see Weaver bark something at Sweeney, which Sweeney will later recall to be, "You effing F you." Sweeney takes a couple of halting steps toward Weaver. Fichter says, "Oh no you don't." Sweeney says, "Oh yes I do, and we are in business." But later statements will indicate that it's not his own honor Sweeney is trying to defend. He'll say that he doesn't want to charge the mound, but that he has to. because through some apparent combination of using foul language and refusing to move a bag, Weaver has failed to respect the game of baseball. Sweeney, throughout his career, took up sword and shield in defense of victims of stem cell research who appeared not to exist, his willfully skinflint malt-o-meal baseball organization, a sleepy Ken Griffey Jr. who wasn't even interested in defending himself, and now, the sport of baseball itself, an ancient and unkillable pastime that has weathered every last storm and does not require defending. Now Weaver, whose back is still turned and who does not know Sweeney is coming, does require defending. And he does have a friend in his catcher, Robert Fick. Months ago, these two did receive some on-the-job training for dealing with an unruly guest. Steve Wilkos, who in this time runs security for the Jerry Springer show that tapes in Chicago, is a big baseball fan. He routinely reserves tickets for visiting players, as he did for Weaver and Fick in May. When they got there, though, Wilkos explained that he was dealing with a bad back and he deputized them as fill-in security agents. Weaver and Fick spent the day wrangling various people on stage and preventing them from tearing each other's faces off. It sounds like they had a good time. But none of those people were Mike Sweeney. So here's an observation that I think might enrich your enjoyment of every mound charging, and in particular this one. This is all 100% improvised on the fly. The vast majority of guys who charge the mound have never done so before at any level of the sport, and it happens so rarely that they've never even seen anybody else do it. They operate purely on instinct. Some go for a tackle, some swing their arms like windmills, some try to open with a flying kick, some forget to do anything at all, and a fair number begin their attack with the handiest of ranged weapons, their helmet. I've seen quite a few guys press the R1 button, but David Justice is the only charger I've seen who actually hit the bullseye, popping Troy Percival right in the dome. The genius of this maneuver lies in how poetically justified it is. How are you going to be mad that he threw at you? You threw at him. Since Weaver didn't actually throw a pitch, of course, Sweeney lacks this justification. He misses wide left. A backpedaling Weaver clearly wants no part of this, but he realizes he needs to square up and brace for impact at some point, and it's only now when an additional Tigers teammate finally appears in frame, shortstop Davy Cruz. Reinforcements typically arrive a lot sooner than this, but even with Weaver stalling for time, there's no one to stop Sweeney from throwing him to the ground and getting a couple of blows in. And Weaver will later claim that that is no accident. This was the last full season Jeff Weaver spent in Detroit. After he was traded the following year, people talked about it as though it were just a matter of time. The multiple dust-ups he was involved in, including this one, didn't really help matters, but it seems mostly like a clash of personalities. Weaver had been described as prickly and overly intense in a way that young starting pitchers can sometimes be as they enter the top echelon of one of the most frustrating lines of work in existence. He had his friends in the clubhouse like Fick and Bobby Higginson who were despondent over losing him, but even a year before Weaver was traded, his own manager, Phil Garner, openly daydreamed about dealing him away. Years later, former teammate Todd Jones went out of his way to knock the guy. It seems you either loved Jeff Weaver or you couldn't stand him, depending on who you were. Days after the fight, Weaver wistfully rattled off the names of the few teammates who did rush in to back him up as he wondered why no one else did. It's no mystery to his manager, who's glad more of his guys didn't jump in, citing last year's Tigers-White Sox Donnybrook that registers a hard 5 according to my grading system. 9 Tigers were suspended after that one, enough to ruin a manager's life for the next week. People used to have a very different view of these things. In fact, Garner's legendary predecessor did. Sparky Anderson, who managed the Tigers in the 80s and 90s, didn't just allow his players to clear the benches whenever a fight broke out. He demanded it. He wanted all his guys jumping the rail and rushing the field, even the guys in the bullpen. Even if players got injured or suspended, the chance to build team solidarity was worth it to him. Weaver probably would have appreciated a manager like that. In Sparky's time, though, there were enough fights to commemorate every phase of the moon. In 2001, Weaver finds himself at the beginning of the end of whatever strange phenomenon this has been. The unspoken, unwritten rules of this thing, the rules that compel you to back up your teammate no matter what he did, no matter whether you liked him personally, are being left in the past. It's worth remembering that the first batter who charged Weaver back in 1999, Manny Ramirez, did so because he thought Weaver intentionally hit him, which I'm convinced he did in order to retaliate against one of his teammates being hit. He did that in just his 8th career start. Even as a rookie, he upheld this code of honor. He was willing to do that for his teammates, but a couple years later, he finds that they have failed to do the same for him. I guess you find out a lot of things when a fight breaks out, he said. Robert Fick, as steadfast a friend as ever, rushes in to try to pull Sweeney off Weaver. After he's swallowed up into the blob of surrounding players, he seems hellbent on tracking down Sweeney, and eventually does. Fick does get Sweeney to the ground, but is then wrangled by Royal starter Paul Bird. So Fick is now engaged with another fighter, but Sweeney still sneaks in a blow to the head. Careful there. You already got what you came for when you took down Weaver. Fick only came to you to defend his guy, and now he's wrapped up and on the mat. Show's over. If you keep swinging on him in this defenseless position, that is a cheap shot. That makes you a punk. And yet, Sweeney steadies himself on Bird's shoulder, winds up, and rocks him in the head with a hard right. But you know, sometimes when you choose violence, you only injure yourself. Usually figuratively, this time literally. Sweeney sprains his wrist as a result of this punch and will miss several games because of it. Fick will be fine. Sweeney then seems to look for somebody else to hit before teammate Carlos Feblis finally pulls him away. Mike Sweeney, shirt torn apart, gasping for air. Looks like a man who just finished either speaking in tongues or following the teachings of someone who did. Before this moment, Sweeney was a devout Catholic. A moment from now, he will be again. Whichever religion he belongs to in this particular moment is anyone's guess. Mike Sweeney was suspended 10 games for his role in this one of the harsher penalties on record for charging the mound. Robert Fick received an 8-game suspension. Almost as many coaches as players were penalized in the wake of this rhubarb, which represented one final charge into battle for many mound-charging veterans. As players, Bill Madlock had once charged a mound, and Al Nipper had been charged. Juan Samuel once played a key supporting role in one, as well as Ed Ott, who, let's just say Ed Ott deserves his own episode of this series. Jeff Weaver and a few others were fined. According to my grading system, this one registers a 4 out of 5 on the pitcher-charger scale because Sweeney scored a hard takedown and landed blows on multiple opponents. It gets a 3 out of 5, also known as a rhubarb, on the surrounding fight scale because those who cleared the benches actually did some of their own fighting. Despite being hit with such a long suspension and suffering a fairly embarrassing injury, Sweeney was the one who came out of this smelling like roses, at least in baseball circles. In the days that followed, Weaver was betrayed upon learning that his own teammates supported Sweeney charging at him and taking him down. A couple fellow Tigers pulled him aside and told him he was wrong to shoot off his mouth at him in the first place. Other teammates anonymously leaked to reporters that they were not happy with him. And while Mike Sweeney would continue to enjoy many more seasons as the Royal superhero, this was the point of no return that led to Weaver getting shipped out of Detroit. Weaver clearly lost this one in every way. And after the game, he offered what might have seemed in the moment like sour grapes.
He's the one that's got to sit there at home tonight and think about what he did.
But he was right. This is gonna stick with Sweeney. A week later, in the letters to the editor page of the Kansas City Star, the hot-button issues of the day, fittingly, are stem cell research and Mike Sweeney. One teacher is unhappy with Sweeney, a role model in the community, setting a bad example for his students. Another letter writer calls him a thug and a fake Christian. He's not. I don't know Mike Sweeney, I've never met him, but a childhood of going to church helps you spot the fakes from a mile off, and I think Sweeney is the real deal. Whenever a follower of Christ has a decidedly un-Christ-like moment like this, people like to make sport of calling them hypocrites, and sometimes they very much are. But I think Sweeney would be the first to tell you that the idea is to try one's best to imitate Christ with the knowledge that you are guaranteed to fall short. He's human. Failings are inevitable, and Sweeney never claimed otherwise. As time went on, Sweeney felt worse and worse about what he did. He was a father. He imagined the inevitable day his kids would see the tape and ask him why he did it, and he wanted to be able to tell them he at least tried to make things right. So nearly 5 years later, Sweeney sucked it up, called Jeff Weaver on the phone, and apologized to him. Now, Weaver's recollection of this call and Mike's recollection of it are totally consistent factually, and they offer no conflicting details. They are nonetheless very, very different. First, the incredibly brief Gospel of Jeff. He called me. He was pretty messed up about it. I totally forgot any of that shit ever happened, but yeah, it's cool. Whatever. And now, the Gospel of Mike. Found within a DVD released in 2007 featuring Sweeney and many other ballplayers, titled Champions of Faith.
5 years would pass without a single word being said between the two. Sweeney wanted to reconcile with Weaver, and so he picked up the phone.
And I couldn't press that send button. So I got on my knees on the side of the bed and I said, Lord, humble me. Jeff, I come to you and I just want to ask that you would forgive me. And Jeff was kind.
That fight had Mike Sweeney down so bad that he was choking back tears about it 5 years later. Now, you can laugh. I did. What we just saw is a deliriously maudlin and overwrought retelling of what's gotta be one of the goofiest baseball moments to happen that entire season. One in which the batter was upset about a bag on the ground. He asked the ump to tell the pitcher to move the bag. The pitcher told the ump, "No, I don't feel like it," then called the batter a
F you.
The batter charged the mound out of a stated conviction to defend the honor of baseball itself. And then, this selfless paladin, this noble keeper of the flame, snuck in a series of cowardly cheap shots against another dude who was on the ground and pinned by somebody else. And then he injured himself instead of the guy he was trying to cheap shot. That is so funny. That is what they wheeled out the soft focus and sparse piano for. He did it again. Just as Sweeney repeatedly came to the defense of that which did not need defending, he created ceremony out of an apology that wasn't necessary to a guy who forgot it even happened. But he nonetheless displayed the humility and the conviction to own up to it, surely aware that wise asses like me might laugh at him. That is not common, and that is something that I think he deserves some respect for. Jeff Weaver, who was only 24 years old that evening, matured considerably as his career went on, and looked back on the incident as something only a younger version of himself would have done. After his trade to the Yankees, he bounced around the National League before wrapping up a solid 11-season career. In 2006, he was traded mid-season to the playoff-bound Cardinals, who took a 3-1 World Series lead over the Tigers. Despite Weaver's early season struggles, the Cards gave him the ball in Game 5 to lock it down against his former team. He pitched the game of his life, giving up just 4 hits and 1 earned run across 8 innings to sew up the series title. Mike Sweeney never had a prayer of reaching the playoffs, let alone the World Series, as long as he was wearing a Kansas City Royals uniform. He finished his career with stops in Oakland, Seattle, and finally Philadelphia, where he was used mostly as a pinch hitter. In Game 2 of the NLDS, the Phillies called in Sweeney to pinch hit. This was his first ever postseason at-bat. It was also his 5,189th and final Major League at-bat. Sweeney looped a single into left center. He was stranded on first. The Phillies didn't use him the rest of the postseason. They were bounced in the next round. And at season's end, Mike Sweeney retired.